first, the big baseball question. As we just noted, in an era of high bullpen usage, the Washington Nationals went the other way, spending big on elite starting pitching. Now, when they won the World Series in 2019, we heard a lot about that being the way to win. Keep your fancy bullpen and your openers, win with elite starting pitching. Well, that sounded great when the Nationals won the title. Barely, but they won the title. But right now, that strategy has them in last place and with the fifth worst run differential in the National League. Max Scherzer has still been great, but he left his last start in the first inning with groin injury. He says he's good now, but it's a concern. He's 36. Steven Strasburg has started just 5 games this year. He's back on the IL, and Patrick Corbin's ERA is around 6. So is getting a big three the way to win or an invitation to disaster, or both? Let's do some digging in. Yeah, the Nationals hit it big, first off, with Max Scherzer in that signing. I'm not a fan of spending big money for pitchers in their 30s, but the Scherzer signing has been fantastic. The Nats hit the free agent market in 2019, got Patrick Corbin for a $140 million deal, and then after winning the World Series, they let Anthony Rendon walk and re-signed Steven Strasburg. Both Rendon and Strasburg signed deals for 7 years, $245 million. Same years, same money. So if you're planning it out, does a big three allocation make sense? For days 4 and 5, most every club uses homegrown, young guys, retreads, bullpen days, tandem starts. Again, for days 4 and 5 anyway. So I think if we're talking about a plan to build a killer front end that can devastate in the playoffs, we'll start with this. And start with the Nationals. The Nationals spend just over half their payroll on those 3 starters. Half! Their payroll is $183 million, 6th highest out of 30 major league clubs. They spend money. And yet those 3 make a combined $94 million. That is 51% of the entire cost of the 26-man opening day roster. Of all 30 clubs, that is the highest percentage of payroll allocated for the top 3. Again, keep that in your mind, 51%. Big ticket starters, the kind that can be devastating in the playoffs. If they're all performing and healthy, that's great. But how different is that from the rest of the league? Start with the Dodgers. World Series champs, great rotation, club with the #1 payroll at over $247 million. Trevor Bauer, Clayton Kershaw, big ticket signings. I'm not even going to count David Price, even though it's the 2nd highest salary in the rotation. He's not starting, and he was the price of admission in the Mookie Betts trade. I'll count Walker Buehler. He only makes $3.75. Those 3 are just under 30% of the Dodgers' payroll. Again, Nationals 51%, Dodgers 30%, and that's with Bauer making $38 million, the highest salary in the sport. What about the New York Mets? This is a good one. They have the ace of the league, and he costs real money. Jacob deGrom makes $33.5 a year. Marcus Stroman is having a very good season. He gets $18.9 million. And the new ownership group got Carlos Carrasco in the Lindor deal, and he makes $12 million. Now, I know Carrasco hasn't pitched. That doesn't matter. The plan was to bulk up with the front end with Noah Syndergaard hurt, so it's Carrasco. Now, the Mets have the #3 payroll in the game at just under $200 million. So even with deGrom, they pay 33% of their total payroll to the front end of their rotation. Very similar to the Dodgers. Again, Nats are at 51%. The Padres are a good test case. They went all in on their rotation this offseason, trading for Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove. Darvish makes real money. Snell made too much for the Rays, and they bought low on Musgrove, and he's been great. But even with Yu Darvish making $22 million, they combined for just under $37 million. The Padres are now top 10 in payroll, so for their shiny new front end of the rotation, they spend just 21% of their total payroll on the big 3, well below the Nats, the Dodgers, and the Mets. Let's do one more. The White Sox, I think, are interesting. They're 15th in payroll. They bought quality, but the market was a big soft, remember, for Dallas Keuchel. They traded for Lance Lynn, who was on a good contract. And years back, they traded for Lucas Giolito, a former first-rounder, in the Adam Eaton deal. His stock was low. So Dallas Keuchel is around $18 million. Lynn's at $8. Giolito only $4.15. The White Sox are now 15th in payroll at $129 million. So the front end of their rotation, only about 23% of their payroll. That's a big difference from the Nationals. 51% to 23%. Real difference in philosophy. The Nationals, Dodgers, and the Mets paid full retail to get the best. The White Sox are spending, Padres are spending, but they look to buy a little low where the market, for whatever reason, has gone cold for, say, call them good B-plus pitchers. Now, those 2 clubs haven't won yet in the playoffs. You could argue that. Dogwood, you're arguing already. But they've gone another route, and it does seem less risk-averse. Before we end the experiment, though, we do need to check in on those Rays. I'm going to study last year's Rays first. That team went 40-20, won the American League pennant. We'll use projected salaries and payroll. It was obviously a truncated season. Charlie Morton made $15 million, Blake Snell $7 million, Tyler Glasnow, stolen from the Pirates, made just $2 million. That's $24 million out of a projected payroll of $72 million. That's 33% of the payroll for the Rays last year. They won a pennant doing that. But of course, then they traded Snell, let Morton walk. So the percentage right now, 13%. The big three, 13%. Looking at Glasnow, Rich Hill, Ryan Yarbrough. 13% of the total payroll. Last year, it was very much aligned with the Dodgers and the Mets. Not this season. So there is no one way of doing it. But again, 50% of your payroll to 3 players when you have to pay at least 26 is very risky. The Nationals won a title, we know that, but they're now paying the price. So we ask, what is the best way to win?